Welcome to Cinema Bites, your go-to for movie recaps in a flash. Big twists, epic moments, all in just minutes. The movie Green Lantern begins. More than 1 billion years ago, a lineage of immortal beings exploited one of the most powerful energy sources, the energy of the green willpower. With this power, the Guardians formed the Green Lantern Corps, whose sole purpose was to protect the universe. The greatest threat they ever faced was in the form of a being called Parallax, and only the strongest member of the Corps, named Abin Sur, was able to imprison him on a planet called Roet. After some time, a strange alien team accidentally crashes on Roet, and there they find Parallax's signal. Suddenly, the ground collapses beneath them, and the crew falls into the place where Parallax is imprisoned. At that moment, Parallax uses their fear to steal their life energy, which makes him strong enough to escape and free himself. On Earth, a young boy named Hal Jordan hears his parents fighting at night, but they quickly make up. His father, Martin, comes into his room and tells him that his mother gets anxious before his test flights because he is a professional test pilot. When Hal asks if he is ever afraid, Martin tells him that his job is to not care about fear, and then encourages him to go back to sleep. The next morning, Hal runs out of the house excitedly without even having breakfast. He chases after the school bus as if he's trying to catch it, but suddenly changes direction and goes to his father's workplace. He finds Martin preparing for a new test flight, and Carl Ferris, his boss, offers to take Hal to his office before they leave. Martin throws his jacket to Hal, telling him to keep it warm until he returns. In Carl's office, Hal meets Carol, Carl's daughter, and Hector Hammond, the son of Senator Hammond. They all go to the runway to watch the plane take off. Some kids arrive at the runway, but Hal runs ahead to get a better view of his father. The plane takes off, but after a while in the air, the engine explodes, causing panic as the plane loses control and crashes into the control tower. Many people run toward the wreckage. Martin tries to land the out-of-control plane safely. Hal runs toward the plane just as Martin manages to bring it down. He smiles when he sees the window open, and Martin emerging safely. Hal continues running toward the plane, but suddenly the plane explodes, throwing him back, unable to do anything to save his father. He stands speechless, watching the paramedics rush to the scene. In the present, legendary Corps member Abin Sur is piloting his spaceship when he receives a hologram call from his partner Sinestro, who tells him his location. He tries to send a message to the Guardians, but learns that they are dead, and that an entire planet was destroyed, and that yellow energy is spreading everywhere. Suddenly, Abin Sur's ring alerts him and he hears a strange, powerful voice calling out to him. Parallax appears out of nowhere and smashes the cabin of his ship. Abin Sur realizes Parallax has come for revenge. Parallax inflicts a devastating wound on him before Abin Sur escapes in a capsule. On his way to a nearby inhabited planet, he informs the Guardians of his injury and the threat he just faced. Meanwhile, Hal wakes up late for work, hurriedly gets dressed, and heads to his car. While driving fast, he tries to wrap a birthday present for his nephew, nearly causing an accident, but manages to regain control. At Ferris Aircraft, Carl introduces a new plane called the Saber, claiming it has all the flying and combat capabilities of a human pilot without any human error. Senator Hammond is also present, telling investors they will conduct a simulation test against two of their best pilots. Hal finally arrives, goes to change, but runs into Carol, who scolds him for not taking things seriously. She tells him she can't defeat the Saber planes in combat and asks him to take the test seriously, because the results are important. Hal reassures her he will prove he is the best and that he can beat the Sabers. Hal and Carol begin the test as the investors watch from the control room. Tom Kalmaku leads the engineering team, all watching as they try to evade the Sabers. Hal comes up with a plan and decides to use Carol as bait to distract the enemy. The Sabers attack Carol and quickly take her out, then focus on Hal. Realizing he has only one option, Hal decides to break all engagement rules and flies above 50,000 feet. The Sabers malfunction and can't reach him, giving him the chance to defeat them. Unfortunately, Hal's own plane malfunctions, and he tries to regain control as he plummets toward the ground. As he struggles, Hal remembers the tragic accident that killed his father and begins to panic and fear. Tom tries to get Hal to focus and regain control, warning him he is too close to the ground. Eventually, Hal regains his senses and ejects from the plane, gasping for air. In Carl's office, Bob scolds Hal for what he did, and Carl joins in, also scolding him. Hal says he did them all a favor by showing them what the Sabers can and cannot do. Carl realizes he will have to lay off some employees, because of Hal's mistake and tries to fire him, but Carol refuses and uses her authority as vice president to suspend him from flying and put him under investigation. Bob then threatens Hal, telling him to watch himself before leaving. Carol tries to find out what happened to Hal, but he refuses to say the real reason, blaming the controls for jamming and complaining that Carol cares more about the company than flying, reminding her she is a skilled pilot. At the same time, Ebensur's escape capsule crashes on a beach somewhere on Earth. Knowing time is running out, he asks the ring to choose wisely, then requests the green energy and flies off. Hal arrives at his nephew's birthday party, finds his mother and siblings watching news coverage of his accident, which causes an argument with his brother Jack, who kicks him out angrily. Hal asks Jim about his son Jason, and Jim tells him Jason is upstairs and didn't want to come down because he was worried about him. Hal goes to see him, and when Jason sees him, he hugs him. Hal tries to cheer him up. After a while, as Hal heads to his car, the green energy surrounds him in a force field and transports him to the crash site of Ebensur's capsule. Hal is shocked by the crash site and runs to help when he discovers Ebensur is an alien. Hal pulls Ebensur from the spaceship and tries to help him with his injuries. Ebensur struggles to speak, telling Hal to take the ring and place it on the lantern inside the ship. Hal doesn't understand and asks what he means, but Ebensur takes his last breath and dies. Hal, unsure what to do, calls Tom, who rushes to the scene. When Tom arrives, he sees the spaceship and tries to analyze it, but Hal reminds him they can't stay there long and shows him the ring Ebensur gave him. Suddenly, they see helicopters approaching the crash site, so they both get in the car and speed away, surprised by a surge of green energy coming out from the lantern. As soon as the ring touched the lantern, and at the same time on the planet Oa, a sensor notifies the Guardians of Ebensur's death and also reports the destruction of 2 planets by the entity Parallax. He tries to convince the Guardians to let him face Parallax before it causes any more harm, but they refuse and say they are aware of the threat and are analyzing the situation. At that moment, Sinestro asks if they are afraid of the enemy they are facing. He tells them he will prove that the Green Lantern Corps is still as strong as ever, and asks to take some of the strongest members with him on his mission against Parallax. This time, the Guardians agree and grant him permission for the mission. Back on Earth, Hal is at home when his doorbell rings. When he opens it, he finds 2 agents who ask him to come with them to a secret location. In this mysterious place, one of the agents uses an iris scan to open a door, and Hector enters. Inside the building, Hector meets Dr. Waller, who apologizes for the inconvenience and leads him to a highly advanced laboratory. Hector is amazed by his surroundings, but is even more shocked when he sees Ebensur's body lying on a table. Waller asks Hector to conduct an initial assessment of the alien's body composition. Hector asks why he was chosen for this task, but unfortunately, she is not allowed to tell him the reason. However, Hector is happy to be alone with Ebensur's body and immediately begins the autopsy, recording notes about the injuries that led to his death. Meanwhile, Hal arrives at his apartment, puts the lantern on the table, and puts the ring on his finger. He tries to activate it, but when he can't, he remembers that Ebensur told him he must recite the oath while wearing the ring. Hal tries to remember what the oath could be, and his frustration grows because nothing is working. By chance, the ring touches him, and a strong energy comes out of him, throwing him on the couch. Then the color of his eyes begins to change, while he looks at the lit lantern and says the oath. Suddenly, Hal hears a knock on the door, after he said the Green Lantern oath. When he opens the door, he finds Carol standing, and wants to go in to talk. They suggest that they go out and talk while they have a drink in the secret lab. Hector continues to dissect small parts of the area. The yellow Parallax penetrates his finger and enters his body. After he finishes the autopsy, he hands a copy of his analysis to Dr. Waller and confirms to her how much the composition of Ebensur's body is close to humans and strange at the same time. He keeps thinking, how will people react if they know that there is an alien he saw? But Waller tells him that the people up there do not want anyone to know anything about this matter, and orders him to keep the secret. Hector agrees. On the other hand, Hal and Carol go to the seas to get a drink. Suddenly, Hal apologizes and remembers the old days. Hal hears a familiar song and Carol refuses to dance with him, but in the end she agrees and they dance. Carol tells him that he is afraid to let her get close to him. She admits that she spent the whole day worrying about him and asks him what happened during the test. To her surprise, he thanks her for the dance. Suddenly, he walks and exits the bar. He reaches his car and tries to grab the keys from Bobo and some of his colleagues at work appear and attack him to take revenge on him because he caused them to be fired when he made a rash decision. Hal tries to defend himself, but he is not strong enough in front of the three men who are walking, and when Hal tries to call them to continue the fight, he inadvertently uses the ring's energy and creates a giant egg that throws them in different directions. The strange power that puts him comes back again, and he tries to remove the ring but it does not work, and this power takes him and puts him in a space tunnel. Hal sees Planet O on the other side of the tunnel, and at the same time, Hodder is unable to sleep and tries to wake up in the bathroom on a strange planet or device that scans Hal's body, which makes him feel severe pain. After that, he wakes up and finds himself wearing the Green Lantern's clothes. After he admires himself in the mirror, Tamari introduces himself and tells him that he is the Green Lantern who is in Sector 2813. Hal is surprised to find out a lot of information about Mars Sector, and then learns that the joining process activates advanced functions in the ring, which includes a large amount of knowledge. Tamara explains that the human race is still small compared to other species, and that Hal is the first human to become a Green Lantern. Hal welcomes him to Planet O and shows him the perfect guards. Ree then flies in the air and Hal tries to imitate him, but at first he falls. After a while, he successfully gets used to flying and walks behind his guide, who tells him about the central battery that charges their lanterns. They reach an empty area and find core members from all 3,600 sectors. The core members look at them for a while and then turn their attention to Sinestro, who comes to talk to them. Sinestro tells the core members about the death of Ibn Sol and tells them about the threat they must face. He talks about their mission against Parlax and encourages them to continue. After this briefing, Tamara explains how the ring works and tells Hal that he saw it making his thoughts become reality. The limits of the ring are only the limits of my uncle who is holding it. Is he trying to form a clear shape with the ring, but his formation does not appear in the same three that he makes and exercises it. Suddenly Kilowog appears. He knows that Kilowog is the one who will train him to fight. Kilowog's first advice to Hal is that he must always be alert and take precautions. Kil welcomes them. They know that today will be the worst day of his life. Indeed, they do not waste time and begin combat training. Kilowog knocks Hal to the ground and throws rocks at him. This forces Hal to make a shield, but his trainer is not impressed and starts throwing a headcannon at him, easily breaking the formation that Hal is making and sending him flying. Then they move on to the next lesson. Agent Wolf uses his ring to build a sun, small next to Hal, and the gravity of the sun was going to pull him towards it, but Hal tied himself to the ground. Kilowog explains that the bigger the body gets, the faster gravity pulls it, and tells Hal that he will help him get up, but suddenly he hits him in the face and tells him that his enemies will not play fair, so will he take this talk against himself and use it against his trainer. Sinestro arrives at the training site and is not happy that the ring chose a human being. Krog says that he will take over the training himself. He warns Hal that he will not tolerate weakness and also asks him if he is afraid and prepares to kill Hal Cone with the ring, and the fight begins easily. Sinestro overcomes him and it becomes clear that Hal is much weaker. Sinestro sells fear in Hal and tells him that this makes him and his formations weak and completely defeats him in the fight and tells him that he is an insult to the ring of the son of Setsiringsus. When Kilowog and Tamari return, Hal decided to leave and Tamari Beef thought that the ring is infallible and that they chose him for a reason that they might not yet see, but Hal Cone has already made his decision and is not going to change it. When he returns to Earth, he tries to get rid of the ring, but he changes his mind when he sees his father's jacket. At the same time, Hector is explaining to his students at school. Suddenly, he starts hearing voices in his head. He tries to ignore them, but the voices remain specific. He discovers that he can now hear the thoughts of one of the students. The student was thinking that this teacher is boring and insulting him secretly, so he throws the student off his chair onto the ground, then leaves the class and runs outside. The students run after him and help their fallen classmate. Hector immediately returns to the lab and analyzes his blood, noticing that his physiology is changing at the cellular level. At that moment, he receives a message from his father, Hammond, asking him to come to the office. In the office, Hammond welcomes Hector, but Hector isn't moved by seeing him. Hammond shows Hector the hard drive containing the analysis and autopsy of the Abin Sur corpse. When Hector sees this, he realizes the only reason he was allowed to do the autopsy was his father's influence, not his own professional qualifications. Hector argues that there are scientists more qualified than him, but Hammond tells him he has to seize opportunities when they come. Hector gets even more upset upon hearing his father's ideas and discovers that his father sees him as someone wasting his life, so he leaves Hammond's office just as he receives a call. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the galaxy, Sinestro and his team locate Parallax and try to imprison him again. Parallax easily breaks the chains, shocking Sinestro with his increased strength. Several core members attack him but are thrown away. Parallax takes advantage of the opportunity, drains their fear and finishes them off. Sinestro manages to escape, informs the Guardians of what happened, and explains how Parallax can instill fear in his victims before feeding on it and their essence. He warns the Guardians that Parallax is becoming stronger and says this is the first enemy to attack them on their own turf. Afterwards, Sinestro insists on learning more about the enemy. Eventually, the Guardians agree to talk and recount how they discovered that willpower alone isn't enough to resist the power of darkness. They considered using the power of fear, but it was unstable. At that time, one of the Guardians refused to abandon the idea and tried to prove that the yellow light of fear could be tamed. He entered the Forbidden Chamber alone, but unfortunately, the power of fear overcame him and he became Parallax. Sinestro then connects all the pieces and understands that Parallax is coming to Obel to destroy the Guardians and wipe out the core. He suggests they return to the abandoned plan and create a yellow ring to help them fight Parallax. Back on Earth, Senator Hammond attends an event organized by Ferris Aircraft. Heel also attends the event and meets Hector, who isn't happy to see him. Heman greets them both and praises Hal, which upsets Hector even more. Heel tries to ease the tension but fails. The three separate, and Heel meets Carol, congratulates her on her success and congratulates her on the contract she secured with Saber's company. Heel asks how Carol managed it, and she tells him she used his reckless behavior as a negotiation tool, meaning he unknowingly did her a favor. They continue talking and laugh at the joke, but Hector watches from afar, jealous. Carl goes up on stage to speak to the guests and thanks his daughter and Carol in particular for helping secure the contract. Carol goes on stage and stands next to Carl, and Hammond praises their efforts. He then toasts to the future, and everyone applauds, knowing the future is in safe hands. Hector approaches Carol as she comes down from the stage. She is happy to see him, hugs him, and he congratulates her on her achievements. Carol apologizes, knowing living with Hammond as a father was difficult. Hector says he's fine, but suddenly starts talking about the alien body he examined. Senator Hammond quickly interrupts, saying it's a fictional story. Hector gets upset, refuses to shake Hammond's hand, and leaves. Later, Hammond boards his helicopter preparing to leave the event. As the helicopter takes off, Hector sees an opportunity for revenge and uses his telekinetic power to hurl a metal pipe at the helicopter's tail rotor. Carol screams for help, and Hal sees what's happening, realizing he must save the passengers and civilians. The helicopter crashes and is about to hit Carol, but Hal uses his ring to stop it, then creates a car to catch the crashing helicopter, moving it along a runway. When a large piece of metal falls toward Carol, Hal throws up an energy shield to protect her. In the end, he stops the car and removes the debris from the shield protecting Carol. Parallax senses Hector's connection to him, and Hector in turn is filled with rage. After the commotion ends, Hector sits and takes a picture of Carol while he listens to the news about the incident at the party. Then Hal comes to check on Carol while wearing his suit. She thanks him for saving her, quickly gets close and recognizes who he is. She asks what's going on, and Hal flies her to the control tower to talk. Hal tells her he resigned from the Green Lantern Corps, but Carol is upset that he always runs from his problems. She returns to her office, and Hal flies off. At the same time, Hector is sitting in his car in front of Carol's office and sees Hal flying away, wondering why things are happening this way. He returns to his lab and continues monitoring the changes happening to him. Dr. Waller enters the office and asks Hector to come with her. She touches Hector, which makes him see her memories. Dr. Waller takes him to the secret lab, where he sees his father Hammond, who blames himself for Hector's transformation and promises to try to fix it. On the other hand, Hector is pleased with his transformation, saying he's never felt better in his life. While saying this, he grabs Hammond, but Dr. Waller quickly sedates him to stop his actions. After being sedated, Hector wakes up to find himself strapped to a table. Hammond tells him they're going to run some tests. He then puts Hammond on the table and prevents him from escaping. At that moment, Hal enters angrily and finds Waller locked against the glass wall. Hector makes her fall, but Hal pulls her and throws burning glass at his face. Then Hal tries to save Hammond, but Hector knocks him down by hitting him with large metal barrel. As he walks towards Hal, he tries to stand and sit next to him. Hector touches Hal and sees his memories, and discovers his secret. Suddenly, he lifts Hammond with his mind and throws him into a room. Then he turns on the furnace. He gets angry and puts his ring on Hector's forehead and sees Parallax, who says that he is Earthblood, and uses his power to defeat the guards. Hector defends himself and screams in the fog before disappearing. After a while, Hal returns home and talks to Tom and Carol about their situation. He says that he feels that the ring is wrong because a member of the Corps should be without fear, but he is full of fear. Carol thinks that his father was always afraid, but he chose to be brave. She says that he has power overcomes fear like his father. At the same time, Parallax communicates with Hector psychologically and gives him orders to eliminate Hal because he is a threat. Hal saves his planet by flying to Planet Power and talking to the Guardians directly. However, the Guardians made the first Yellow Lantern ring, and Sinestro decided to be the first to use it. He comes to the planet to ask the Guardians to help and save his planet. He explains to them that they will never be able to recover if they use the new ring. He also asks the Guardians not to give in to fear so he can save his planet. The Guardians agree, and Sinestro wishes him good luck. Hal returns to Earth and finds Hector in the aircraft hangar. He also finds Carol flying in the air with a needle close to her neck. At that moment, Hector appears and threatens to inject her with the same thing that connected him to Parallax. Hal convinces him not to use the injection on her and offers to give him his power ring if he lets her go. Hector agrees to the deal and takes the ring, feeling a great surge of power, but he breaks the deal and tries to attack Hal. The attack doesn't hit Hal because he is the ring's true master. The attack turns back and hits Hector, causing him to fall and release Carol, but Hal catches her just in time before they hit the ground. At the same time, Parallax arrives on Earth, sneaks into the building, and finds Hector, whom he calls a failure, and absorbs his essence until he dies. Hal tries to take the ring from Hector, but he can't because Parallax threatens to take his essence. Carol realizes Hal needs help and uses missiles from the sabers to distract Parallax, then grabs the ring and throws it to Hal, allowing him to fly them safely out of the building. Hal lands on a rooftop, and Carol is afraid he won't survive the battle with Parallax. When Hal feels he has no choice, he decides to sacrifice himself for the greater good. He hugs her before flying off. Parallax wreaks havoc on Earth, attacking civilians and taking their essence. Hal arrives at the scene of the battle to fight Parallax, but he gets trapped, and Parallax senses the growing fear inside him. But Hal doesn't give up. He recites the Green Lantern Oath and flies inside Parallax. The battle moves outside Earth, and Hal flies through the asteroid belt to slow Parallax down. Unfortunately, the plan doesn't work, but at that moment, he gets an idea when he sees the sun. He quickly heads toward it, luring Parallax after him. The sun's gravity traps Parallax, and he can't escape. Hal delivers a final blow, pushing Parallax into the sun and destroying him. In doing so, he applies the lesson his mentor taught him at the beginning of the film. Exhausted after the battle, Hal floats toward the sun, but Sinestro, Kilowog, and Tom Ari save him. They all return to Oa, and Sinestro praises Hal's courage in facing Parallax. Finally, Sinestro accepts Hal as a Ben Sur's successor, and the Green Lantern Corps celebrate. Hal then returns to Earth victorious, and tells Carol he needs to travel for a while. He says goodbye and flies off. Meanwhile, Sinestro goes to the vault where the yellow power ring is stored, breaks the barrier protecting it, and takes the ring. He then removes his Green Lantern ring and puts on the yellow one, which turns his suit yellow and gives him the power of fear. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to get more new videos. See you next time.